AJ Styles was on a podcast, not Chris Jericho's podcast, although he may well be wrestling him at some point next year. But AJ Styles was on a podcast, the No Contest Wrestling podcast, talking about the lack of quality selling in wrestling today. And he said he would like to see the industry return to a less is more type of approach. He said, I can tell you one thing that's missing, and I still, to this day, I will go over to my buddy's house before we work out, and we'll watch old school wrestling. It's what we do. That's kind of our thing. And the one thing I think is missing the most is selling. When he was asked to respond to name one thing that is missing in the modern wrestling era, he said the way they used to sell back in the day, man, they really made you believe that this hurt, that this guy's in pain. And I just feel like we've gotten away from that. And I'm just as guilty as anybody. But if we could take it back and make it a less is more kind of thing, I think that would be best for everybody. And naturally, he's going to say that. The man is 48 years old, who wrestled a very high-risk aerial style for a large swath of his career. And I'm sure he's feeling pretty beat up. And I'm sure he recognizes that as you get older, as someone who is the crusty old veteran now in the wrestling business, that, you know what? Maybe it's not always the smartest thing to go out there, balls to the wall, and do all of this risky, crazy, dangerous stuff. Maybe sometimes you could just slow things down a little bit. You do a little bit less, but you get more out of it. And that probably is something that comes with just experience and time. Because when you're young, like some of these guys in NXT, you're a Leon Slater in TNA, you're a Javon Evans going out there, 20 years old, 21 years old. You use the tools that you have, right? Javon Evans is not a big guy. He's not going to go out there and work a big man match. He's a lightweight, right? He's not exactly muscled up or anything like that. So he's going to use that to his advantage. He's going to fly. He's going to do things that dazzle you and make you go, holy shit, I can't believe he just did that. That's what made the match with him and Leon Slater so much fun to watch, because their styles are so similar. Their body types are so similar, and two of the best in the world at what they do right now. So they went out there and had this great match. But you do all of these moves and these dives and you take these incredible risks. And at what point do you just go, how do you top this? Like, where do you go from here? It's just the natural question to ask. And this has been the age-old question in wrestling. This is not like a new phenomenon here. I'm just using them as an example. But I 100%, as a fan watching the shows, I 100% agree with AJ Styles. Although I will say, you watch SmackDown each week, you've got Ilya Dragunov out there every week selling his ass off like he's on the verge of death in every match. Sometimes he may go a little over the top with it, but I appreciate the way that he sells in his matches. Dragunov is one of the few, honestly, in wrestling today who can still sell in a way that is similar to a Bret Hart. And to me, Bret Hart will always be the master at it. There's a reason why Gorilla Monsoon started calling him the excellence of execution. Bret Hart was the best when it came to selling a beating in a wrestling match and making it look as realistic as possible. When he was in there and he was, down on the mat, thrown into the turnbuckles, taking that chest bump in the corner when the heel was working him over, you felt like this was a battle. This was a struggle for him. He was fighting for his life in there. And that type of selling is virtually non-existent in wrestling these days. And I'll throw one more thing in there, and AJ didn't mention this, but I've brought this up before. I don't understand why we don't have that many wrestlers in wrestling today, it just feels like to me, who know how to throw a punch like those guys did back in the day. I can list off, and Bret's one of those guys, but Steve Austin and Scott Hall and Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler, there are certain people who, when they would throw like a closed fist and they would throw a work punch in a wrestling match, it looked devastating. It looked like they were really punching the guy in the fucking face. And I just feel like we don't have as much of that in wrestling now. And part of it is the fact that a lot of guys will throw forearms, which I think is something that I first started noticing that watching New Japan. I think it's a Japanese thing, strong style. I guess the logic behind it is, well, you don't want to break your hand, so you throw a forearm. So you can explain it in that fashion. But there's a lot of wrestlers who will do that now. We have these forearm battles and these chop battles, yay, boo, all this stuff. But just throwing a simple punch, I think, is a lost art. It really is. But the art of selling is so important in the course of a wrestling match. That's how you tell a story. You tell a story through the way that you are selling. in the course of the match. And if you're going to make a big heroic comeback, that's part of the story that you're telling. So AJ is 100% bang on in that. I think part of it, I don't want to excuse the talent. You know, the talent is guilty of it. AJ himself said, I'm guilty of it. But also, it's, I think, just the nature of wrestling television now, where everything is just, there's this sense of urgency and the pace has been picked up so much. And you've got to go from one to the other to the other. And the way these matches are constructed, and I see it a lot watching AEW, where it's just spot, right? We got to go from one big spot to the next. And you don't leave any time for selling. And it's not just an AEW thing. But I notice it a lot watching Dynamite week to week or the pay-per-views. And you just do this big spot. But I'll tell you what, I'll give you a WWE example. And I'll use Ilya Dragunov in the match that he just had with Axiom. So they just had this United States Championship Open Challenge on Friday. And Axiom did this great move where he did a backflip off the ropes while he was holding Dragunov's arm, and he caught Dragunov on the way down with this spiked DDT, and it looked fantastic, right? This great fucking move. And of course, you know, he didn't win the match with it, but shortly thereafter, we had a top rope Spanish fly spot, and Axiom hit a top rope Spanish fly, and went immediately after that, he went to go set it for his finisher, which is the Golden Ratio. And Dragunov caught him with a Torpedo Moscow coming out of the corner and headbutted him right in the fucking face or chest or whatever it was. And it looked great. It was a great closing sequence and it got the fans into it. But you know what? I'm watching this and I said this on Friday. I'm like, boy, the top rope Spanish fly really doesn't mean what it used to. That's just one example of these big moves that these guys do. And it's a setup move. Or it sets up a near fall and the match just keeps going. That's why I love how Penta, when he left AEW and came to WWE, they at least have really taken great pains to make the Destroyer a finishing move. It is no longer just a setup move. It's not just another move. It's a move he actually wins matches with, and I appreciate that. But it just goes to this problem that I've noticed in wrestling today, and maybe if you're a newer fan, you don't see it as a problem because you have no concept of what wrestling used to be like. To you, this is what wrestling is. It's balls to the wall, nonstop, boom, 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 spot, and anything else is boring. Oh, this guy, why is he on the mat? He's just laying there, he's making faces. Fucking boring. Some people don't like that. But I'm with AJ on this one. I think it's definitely something that has become a lost art because I feel like wrestlers are too afraid to slow the pace of the match down. I think they're too afraid to slow the pace of the match down. I think there are definitely, absolutely some wrestlers out there who pay too much attention to social media and social media comments, and they don't want to log on and scroll through their timeline and see, oh, this match sucked, this match was boring, this match was slow, this match was dull. And there are matches that are just a little too slow paced, right? You just got to find that happy medium. But I think that's part of the problem. And there's just this constant need to, okay, we got to keep things moving here. We got to do another big move because we don't want to lose the crowd and we want to get those chants. We don't want them to, lose interest in what we're doing here. And it's just a different way of doing things, than it was back in the day. You can borrow from the old school on certain things. Not everything has to be old school. Things change. Things evolve. But there is a lot from the old school that I think if you were to educate and condition the current audience that this is the way it should be, they would buy into it, and I think it would really help the product a lot.